Ayācemwanēwek Ayācemwanēwek Nana Ayācemwanēwek Muqsahkwat Mishikni yo Osiens pas na watch ka kikitawao no name it. So this is the awesome, amazing Judd Justin Gauthier. We got him over here at Menominee U to do a short interview about just what the heck he's been up to here recently. So Judd, why don't you take a second here and introduce yourself to the people? I know you, they might not.
Ayācemwanēwek, Judd Gauthier here, Justin Gauthier. Born and raised on the reservation, grew up on Rabbit Ridge and Round Lake we moved out to in the early 80s. And just, grew up on the reservation, went to school up at St. Anthony's, went to high school out at Flandreau Indian School, found my way back here, met Ronco.
Who's your people?
My family is Gauthiers and Ayācemwanēwek. So my dad is Johnny Gunn Gauthier, the artist, and my mom is Andrea White, Andrea Ayācemwanēwek. My grandparents are Decoras from Ho-Chunk, and Ayācemwanēwek's here on the res.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool, man. Well, landing for that, Judd. So we really wanted you in here today because you got some interesting stuff going on. But before we get to that, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you come to where you're at today? Tell us about your educational journey, things you learned in the struggle or just going through life.
For sure, man.
Things that people could benefit from.
Yeah, the struggle, that's straight up, bro. The struggle was real back in the day, man. Like I said, I went to St. Anthony's, Catholic school up in Neopet. And so that was sort of my grounding. I went to KPS, went straight to...
Literally, you're grounding.
Grounding, yeah. Yeah, there was some of that going on for sure, man. But so I went through that educational journey, and then I went out to Flandreau Indian School for high school, the boarding school out there. I went out 4 years. Not even court ordered, bro. I just stayed out there because I made friends and family out there, But yeah, and to this day, I still have friends, that I consider family, and like, if I travel across the country, bro, I can stop off at reservations and visit, people and all that stuff. So I went through, like, my youth and my 20s sort of collecting name tags and hairnets, just doing jobs here and there, bro.
Gotcha.
And I didn't get back. I was an adult returning student to East-West University up here. So that was, like, the start of my, like, secondary education. And there's so many amazing people from the community that were teachers there, and it's sort of a forgotten little chapter of, it's just sort of like a little cul-de-sac, you could say, that kind of ended at that
figuratively
time.
And literally
and
now, right?
Yeah,
literally
yeah,
doesn't
sure.
exist anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore, but I'm still, like, talking to people that I went to school with there, and some of the teachers there, so I went there and ended up sort of jumping to college in Menominee Nation. So I went there. I went down to the Green Bay campus, which was in like a mini mall, a little strip mall on Packerland at the time, And my math skills were not great, so I had to take like the the intro math course, and it was interesting because I was working retail at the time, so my mind was sort of into basic math, but that first day they like had us making change and stuff in the class, so I was like, I know how to do this, but so I ended up coming to Kashina campus here, moving back up on the res, and went for 4 years to get 2 associates up here in sustainable development and liberal arts degree.
Cool, man. I think that's when I started to get to know you a little better. Seeing you involved in like the POSO project and
that was prior to, that was prior to. But yeah, we had met through just ceremony and stuff, singing and sweating and all that. That was a big chapter of my life, bro. To help me on the road to recovery,
Don't forget about it in your educational journey just because
Yeah.
it might not be formal. Why don't you go ahead and talk about that a little bit, whatever
Sure,
you're
man.
comfortable with.
Yeah. After graduating from CMN, I sort of used it as the the platform to go on to UW Madison. So I went to Wisconsin-Madison. It is hilarious, bro, because at Flandreau, I never took a foreign language, right?
Okay.
And, like, everybody there was like took Spanish. It was like the big one, But I graduated without a foreign language credit. So then when I went to get into Madison, my transcripts didn't show a foreign language credit. So they said, well, we want to accept you, but you need a foreign language credit. And I didn't take anything at the college. So I was like, man, what am I going to do? And somebody, I forget who, told me, like, why don't you talk to JT? And, you took Menominee language with, like, Rose Wakey and JT in, like, grade school, so you could, like, claim that, So I talked to JT, man, and he was like, yeah, I'll write a letter for you, Like, we sat, and he, like, asked me some stuff, and I was like, well, yeah, I need this, And he was like, if they ask you anything, just start naming some trees or, like, counting. But it was super ironic that, like an indigenous language of North America got me into a Big Ten university as a foreign language.
Yeah, right.
It was really, like, shocking to me that worked, bro. But I got in, and then God bless Dr. Greeno, Dr. Geraldine Greeno.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she connected me with Hetty Loffer down there at Science House at Madison. And they had written a grant proposal together called the POSO Project that was focused on sort of trying to integrate traditional ecological knowledge and Western science into a curriculum for grade school. So that was, like, super on board for me, man. Like, it just was in my lane at that time. So that's how we started working together at that time. And so just that example of, like, getting into that Big Ten university with Menominee language as a foreign language credit, I found was so, like, it was like satire, It was like living satirically at that time. But, like, that POSO project was really foundational for me to develop my professionalism and also to sort of be able to talk and to communicate basically with people outside of basically the sphere that I had been in,
Yeah. I get that totally, man.
Yeah.
And so you kind of summarize your journey, man.
Yeah.
St. Anthony's, Flandreau, East West, CMN, UW Madison.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned ceremonies. I think it would be cool for people to hear how that impacted your development as
man.
well.
Yeah, it was
to the degree you're comfortable with talking about.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I don't mind talking about that. I guess around the turn of the millennium, I started getting in trouble with the law drinking, and I was an alcoholic, bro.
So you're talking in the 1900s.
Yeah. In the later part of the last century, I had started developing a problem, and I just developed it to the point where the law started taking notice of me.
All right.
So I got into some trouble, man, with the law, and I did. It was really a sort of a circuitous route that I came back to, practices of ceremony, man, because it was part of my life as a young kid, but it was really sort of like a touristy thing at that time for me, even because it was just the circumstances of my life at that time. So then coming back to it for myself and sort of to develop my own, I guess, adulthood, man, to develop into an adult, it made a big difference to me for to go to ceremonies and to hear other people's experience of being an Indigenous person in the modern world and all of the sort of difficulties and challenges that they had to go through, and really, like, sort of really personal stuff that people talk about in ceremony, it really is akin to, you know, what therapy is outside of indigenous cultures when they talk about like Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, things like that. It really sort of helped me to realize, to get outside of my own life and be like, there are people around me, you know, my community and my family members who I'd never even met before, who are struggling just the same way I am. And I'm really lucky, you know, like it makes you realize how lucky you are, what you have in life when you go to these ceremonies, man, and realize that this has been a historical practice for generations and generations that has developed over time to sort of fit into that mold of being like therapeutic for us as indigenous people, you know. So even if the practice comes from outside of the community, you know, which is what some people will say is like, you know, this is like North, you know, this is like North Pacific West practice, or this is Plains practice, you know, or this is from all East, or what have you, bro. I feel like if it's a positive thing and it helps people, I heard this quote this summer and it makes a lot of sense to me. I'd rather see 100 sweat lodges on the reservation than 100 drug dealers, you know. So it just made sense to me in the way that I feel like ceremony is here for us to sort of develop ourselves, you know. And that's what it did for me throughout the early 2000s into, you know, 2010s and all that. And I still, you know, attend ceremonies whenever I'm able to.
Well, Anand, for sharing that, man.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, I think it's fitting for this conversation with the audience, like, to understand and recognize that, you know, what he's talking about is just as valuable, and we should validate it a lot like we do our educational journey. So I appreciate you sharing it kind of in tune with all that. But so kind of moving on, so you had quite a diversity of post-secondary education,
Yeah.
As well as your personal and spiritual growth through ceremonies. Where has that led you in the way of working opportunities and guided you through your life since then?
Oh man, it was really sort of like a confluence of those things, those ways of life, man, like the educational path and my personal like ceremony path and relationships with friends and family that sort of led me to my master's program at Institute for American Indian Arts in Santa Fe. Their low-res program out there, it's the Master of Fine Arts program. So, you know, after attaining my bachelor's at Madison, one of the librarians at CMN told me about this program that was, I believe was in like the American Indian College Fund magazine or something like that. So I wrote a short fiction story to get in. They accepted me. I went out there and met immediately two screenwriting students, Peter Brass and Megazee Pensino, and we basically just stood outside and talked about movies for like 20 minutes, you know, and the state of indigenous representation in movies and TV shows and things like that. And I thought, man, this is where I should be at because I know what I'm talking about. You know, like when it comes to like movies and TV shows, I have a deep knowledge of that. So it was sort of like ingrained, like we talked about before we jumped on, like those neural pathways in the brain, like that hours and hours and hours of watching movies and TV. I didn't realize I was like researching, you know. But yeah, so I immediately switched to screenwriting, and then that just like opened my mind up to possibility, man. Because reading a screenplay and being able to see it in my mind as I read it was like, I can do this too. Like I could write a story down that's in my mind, put it on a page, someone else can read it and they can see it too. So that was a huge inspiration to me to go through that program. And, you know, big shout out to everybody out there. That program is still going on. There's some amazing people that have come out of that, and I'm sort of in the screenwriting program. one of the graduation day speakers really sort of like doused the fire for me a little bit. He was like, yeah, the chances of becoming a screenwriter, there's a higher dropout rate than the Navy SEALs program. So it's like, man, am I really that dedicated to this idea, you know? But I think with any like creative artistic endeavor, it's just sort of getting your own voice down on page, or you know, your pictures, your drawings, your photography, whatever. Like get it out there to people.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh, that's cool, man. I don't see you ringing that bell anytime soon to get out. So
yeah.
One of the things that
I'm not even approaching it.
yeah,
That's the old saying, right? It's like you walk up to the bell, you might as well ring it. I'm not going up to the bell, you know.
Cool,
so,
man. Good. Keep grinding. But I also know you're involved in a play of sorts. Or
oh yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, man. That was really exciting, man. Basically, well, like I said before, like the relationship of friends and family has really propelled me along, and in that way, like Migazi Pensano, who was in the class before me at IAI, is part of the 1491s, the comedy troupe, and they were commissioned by the Oregon Shakespeare Festival to write a play, and they had never done that before, but just as a group, they did like the YouTube videos and stuff, which I'm sure everyone knows, Slapping Medicine Man and all singing lessons and all those Indian store. All those videos, but they created this play that was meant to be sort of the journey of one indigenous family from the massacre at Wounded Knee through to the occupation of Wounded Knee, and they titled it, ironically enough, Between Two Knees. So it's like a history comedy play, sort of in the vein of like a Mel Brooks History of the World, sort of like a really joke, dramatic moment, joke. So the sort of background with that
kind of sounds like Res Life, bro.
Yeah, it really does. Like the script itself really spoke to me in that way, man. Is that I could see what they were doing in the way that they were sort of portraying their sense of humor and the way that it's utilized in our communities, and also sort of breaking in with these dramatic moments. That's the way it is at any tribal household. It'll be like there's moments of drama, man, and it can be good or bad, and then there's that time where we process that, and then I think humor is a big part of that processing that happens. So like the background of that was that a couple of the 1491s were actually cast in the play to be a part of the play, and Bobby Wilson was cast as Larry, the narrator character, and Bobby, shout out to Bobby and Megs and all the boys, Bobby got a job writing somewhere, so he couldn't do the play, couldn't be on stage, so Megsy basically asked if I wanted to send in a tape, so he sent me like a one-page sides they call them, so just one-page dialogue, and I recorded it and sent it in, and then they were like, well, we're interested in having you audition for this. So I went through an actual audition process, and big shout out to Oregon Shakespeare Festival on taking a chance on a couple of actors who never were on stage before. It was me and Whitco Long, Muskogee Creek singer, nicknamed the Johnny Cash of the Muskogee Creek Nation. Great singer, man.
All right,
He's got a great voice. But so we were on stage together, bro, and we went through a season, the 2019 season at Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and that was 120 some shows, 123 or something like that. And
some mileage out of you guys.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we really put a lot of work into getting the play from the page to the stage, and working together. But when you have those minds writing that play and being in the room with you and working out the funny and ramping into the drama and then coming off back into humor, I mean, it was really a special thing to be a part of that. You know?
Sounds like it, man.
Yeah. So it was amazing, and got to spend time with all sorts of really talented people out there, and my cast is the cast of the play is amazing, and we're hoping that, fingers crossed, that it works out for it to be at the Yale Repertory Theater this March. Well, we're going out in March, but it'll be in May to June.
Live action again?
Live action again on the stage, yep, and
cool.
we're hoping, it was scheduled to be last year, but with the pandemic, live theater got sort of squashed, so we were scheduled to be out.
So that's our chance, guys. If you didn't see it, that's our chance to get at it if that goes through. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, keep an eye on the socials because it'll be a thing. It blew my mind when somebody messaged me a screenshot of their Google search, and I was in like the banner on the top of the computer. I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. You know, I'm not seeing a dime for that, but you know,
still pretty cool, man.
Yeah, it's still very cool, man. Yeah. So acting just sort of fell in my lap, you know, like I didn't really...
It's the best stuff, man.
I know, yeah, and it was basically where I was supposed to be at that time, and I know that I've told you a couple stories, and that's what you said to me, and other people have said that to me, like you were just where you were supposed to be at that time, so that's how I approach it, you know, it's like, it was just something that I have to do.
Man, that's way cool, man. Well, Lannon, for sharing that,
yeah.
You know, aside from all the cool stuff you've already done, right now you're kind of engaged in a really cool project, and we talked a little bit about it over the past several months, but why don't you go ahead and give these guys a little bit about what's going on currently with you?
Yeah, man. So being a screenwriter is a very lonely occupation most of the time, man. It's like you're putting your ideas down on page and hoping that it makes sense to other people, you know? And you send it out to someone and you'll get notes back. And it's just sort of like any artistic endeavor. It's like you want people to take you seriously, you know, and you want to be, you want to get stories out there that are important to people. So during the pandemic, I was living in Denver with my nephew and his girlfriend, and we were living there, and I was sort of like, my wheels are spinning, man. I was writing a screenplay, like a horror comedy screenplay that was just for me. I had reached that point in where, you know, a couple times I had to call people and they had to talk me back off the ledge for my career, you know. They were like, no, just keep going, just keep writing, you know. So I took up this project just for myself to write and talk with myself about my process and my practice. And during that time, my cousin Amber Gauthier had, through a friend of hers, a really talented crow artist, Mona Bear Medicine Crow, had found this script from a writer, Elizabeth Raya, and without giving too much away, because it's in, basically we're developing it right now. It's a story about a Crow family and their experience with the missing and murdered Indigenous women scourge that's happening, and just sort of the fallout from that, with that family and in that community. So I read the script, got on board with it because I really recognized something in the characters that I loved, and then we, Elizabeth and I, along with the team, with Mona and Amber and some other people, developed the script over 6 months. So we wrote a pilot for a series, and our idea is to have a 7-episode series, like a limited series. So we have that developed over 6 months, and now we're almost ready to start shopping it around. So I'm really proud of that work, and I look forward to hopefully being able to learn a lot about Crow agency and going out there and meeting people and, you know, learning about another community, another culture. Just speaking with Bear, there's a lot of corollaries with Menominee culture,
right, yeah.
You know, and a lot, we just have a lot in common, man. So, yeah, so I'm excited if that goes through.
Well, that's
that
cool, man.
It'll be something that happens, you know.
You guys keep your ear on the ground for that, man.
Yeah.
So, that's awesome. Now let's transition into now and today. Like,
Yeah.
you're working on some comic stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's the American Indian College Fund. They're the fundee for this grant, Native Arts and Learning Sharing grant, and the College of Menominee Nation Sustainable Development Institute, specifically within that institution, approached me about being a part of this grant and being a lead writer for a comic book that they had an idea for. So they want to share, basically they want to share the Menominee theoretical model of sustainability. So it's a cosmology, it's like an icon that, you know, different communities or institutions can use to sort of influence their decision making when it comes to sustainability of a project, you know, be it environmental or financial, whatever. It can be used in a lot of different ways. So it's always been sort of in the background of College of Menominee that it's been something that's been studied, written about, talked about, used on different projects and things like that. So they just want to, like, you know, promote it. So we're creating a comic book, a one-shot, one issue, and we're hoping that we're able to promote that theoretical model of sustainability. So we're doing it in a very creative way, in sort of a referential way to stories of the past and this community and language. And we're trying to throw a lot of stuff into it. And it's like a big experiment because I've never written a comic book before.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's something new that I'm excited to be a part of. And I'm going to be talking about it later today at 1 p.m. So if you guys want to jump on the Sustainable Development Institute Facebook page on the live stream, I'll be on there at 1 telling most of the same stories I told you right here.
Where can we see and find this in the, like, when it's...
So the granting period is going to end in first quarter of next year, and we're hoping to have a physical book that'll be handed out in the community at a couple of events and be available at the library and things like that, and at the college. So we want to be able to have a physical analog copy for people to be able to take home, read, share with their kids, or vice versa. The kids bring it home, share it with the adults, because we're going to sort of write it in that Marvel comic style where it sort of bridges, you know, childhood and adulthood. It's sort of like an adolescent level, I guess you could say. But yeah, so that's going to be available early next year, and then we want to also have it as digital as well, to be viewed online as well. So there's a lot going on with that.
All right,
That's
cool.
what I'm up to right now.
Cool, man. So I know we got to get you out of here, but I wanted to do our due diligence and say, you got anything outgoing, a message that you want to share with the folks?
Sure.
Or?
Yeah. Just say Ayācemwanēwek for the work that you guys are doing here, man. And I know that a lot of people in the community are grieving, you know, going through the loss of family members and things like that. And I shared with you that my uncle Tony Gauthier passed away in December, and I was able to speak to him in the hospital, and he just let me know, you know, that he loved me and that he wanted me to bring my talents back to the community to share, you know, and to help, because I had done that before in the Poso project. So I just want to let the community know that if you guys have stories, or, you know, if you have a creative Jones to do something, I want to encourage you guys to do it. Just do it. Even if it's a half hour a week that you sit down and bead something, do some leather work, whatever it is. My dad really stressed the fact that every Indian person is an artist. You know, deep in our DNA. We have like art, man. We create beautiful things with our hands and our minds. So I would just encourage, I would echo that message, in that what you guys are doing at Menominee U is this beautiful revitalization and, reckoning of this language that's deep within our minds, and in our hearts. And I've been sporadically attending my online classes. Sorry, Kara, I haven't been there for a couple weeks. I've been super busy. But I really dig the whole Zoom class setup, and I would encourage other people out there too, if you're curious about your language and to learn how to converse and speak, and just learn something new that's really old, it's really a part of who you are as a Menominee person. Be sure to check out Menominee U, because they're doing some amazing work and invaluable to our community. This type of thing is something that our grandparents and great-grandparents and even our parents talked about. There should be something like this, but it's actually happening now. So it's super exciting to be here with you guys and to stop in, visit whenever I can,
I appreciate that, man. And Judd's been present on the porch more than once. You guys riding by might have seen him out there. But I want to thank him for stopping in today. He's got a amazing story to share, and I'm happy that he came through and did that. If you guys are interested in things that he said, we can always help track him down so you can kind of hold him to that. He likes to encourage a creative process, and I think he could be a help to a lot of you guys who maybe don't know how to go about doing some of the things that he talked about here on this podcast. But I want to say Ayācemwanēwek, brother. Ayācemwanēwek. Eneq.